In the small, quiet town of Willowbrook, nestled deep within a dense forest, an ominous presence had begun to take hold. For years, the townsfolk had whispered about strange occurrences and eerie happenings, but they were always dismissed as mere superstitions. That was until the summer of 1987, when a series of terrifying events unfolded. It was a warm and humid night, with the moon hanging low in the sky, casting an eerie silver glow over Willowbrook. Sarah Miller, a curious and adventurous teenager, had always been drawn to the legends that surrounded the town. She had heard tales of a haunted mansion deep within the woods, a place where no one dared to venture after dark. But Sarah was determined to prove that there was no such thing as ghosts. Armed with a flashlight and a camera, Sarah set out into the woods, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. The trees seemed to close in around her as she ventured deeper into the darkness. The leaves rustled in the wind, creating eerie whispers that sent shivers down her spine. As she approached the mansion, an overwhelming sense of foreboding washed over her. The building loomed before her, its windows shattered and its walls covered in ivy. Sarah pushed open the creaking front door, her flashlight cutting through the thick darkness within. She stepped cautiously through the foyer, her footsteps echoing eerily on the hardwood floors. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, and the walls seemed to be closing in on her. Sarah's camera flashed, capturing the haunting scene before her. But as she explored further, Sarah began to feel that something else was there with her. She heard faint whispers, like a distant conversation carried on the wind. Her flashlight flickered, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. She could feel eyes watching her, unseen but ever present. Sarah's heart raced as she continued to explore the mansion, determined to capture proof of the paranormal. She descended into the basement, her footsteps echoing in the darkness. And there, in the dim light of her flashlight, she saw it. A figure, shrouded in tattered robes, stood in the corner. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and it let out a bone-chilling wail. Sarah stumbled back in horror, dropping her camera as the figure advanced towards her. She fled from the basement, racing up the stairs and through the mansion, desperate to escape the malevolent presence that pursued her. She burst out of the front door, gasping for breath as she fled into the woods. The night seemed to close in around her, the trees twisting and contorting as if they were alive. As Sarah ran deeper into the forest, the whispers grew louder, the shadows more menacing. She knew she was being hunted. With each step, the terror grew, and she could feel the presence closing in on her. Finally, as she stumbled through a clearing, Sarah saw a glimmer of hope. A small, dilapidated cabin stood before her. She raced inside and slammed the door shut, her heart pounding in her chest. But as she turned to catch her breath, a voice spoke from the darkness, a voice she recognized all too well. "Welcome back, Sarah," it said, and the figure from the mansion stepped out of the shadows, revealing itself to be her long-lost twin sister, Emily. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she realized the truth. Emily had disappeared into the woods years ago, presumed dead. But now, here she was, alive but changed, a terrifying presence in the shadows. And as Sarah looked into her sister's glowing eyes, she knew that the true horror of Willowbrook was not the ghosts of the mansion, but the darkness that lurked within her own family. The sisters were never seen again, and the legend of Willowbrook grew even darker. A cautionary tale of the paranormal fright that could hide in the shadows of even the most ordinary places. Deep in the heart of the Louisiana bayou, where the air hung thick with humidity and the night was darker than sin, there existed a place known as the Whispering Marsh. The locals spoke of it only in hushed tones, for they knew that the marsh held secrets, dark, ancient secrets that were best left undisturbed. On a moonless night in October, a group of adventurous college students decided to explore the Whispering Marsh. They had heard the legends, the stories of eerie voices that called out in the darkness, beckoning those who dared to venture in. Armed with flashlights and a sense of invincibility, they set off on their ill-fated journey. The marsh was a labyrinth of twisted trees and murky waters, and the sound of croaking frogs and chirping crickets filled the air. The students pressed on, their flashlights cutting through the inky blackness like knives. But as they ventured deeper into the marsh, the whispers began. At first, they were barely audible, a faint rustling of leaves or a soft sigh in the wind. The students exchanged nervous glances, but brushed it off as the product of their overactive imaginations. They had come here for thrills after all. As the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Words formed, though they were incomprehensible, like a foreign language spoken in hushed tones. Panic began to set in among the group, and they quickened their pace, trying to find their way back to safety. But the marsh seemed to conspire against them, the twisted trees closing in, the waterways shifting like a maze. The whispers grew more sinister, more intimate, as if the marsh itself were alive and taunting them. One by one, the students began to disappear. A hand reached out from the darkness, pulling one into the murky waters. Another was ensnared by twisted branches that seemed to come alive. The last two, a boy and a girl, stumbled upon an ancient, rotting tree with a gaping maw for a hollow. Desperation clawed at them as they realized there was no escape. The whispers surrounded them, forming words that they could finally understand. "You are ours now." As the couple clung to each other in terror, the ground beneath them gave way, and they tumbled into the gaping maw of the tree. They fell into a darkness so absolute that it seemed to swallow their very souls. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the whispers ceased. The marsh returned to its eerie silence, as if nothing had ever happened. The following morning, a search party combed the Whispering Marsh, but there was no sign of the missing students. The bayou had claimed them, as it had claimed so many others before. The whispers, the darkness, the ancient secrets, they all remained hidden deep within the heart of the Whispering Marsh, waiting for the next group of foolish souls to venture in. And as the sun set over the bayou, casting long, ominous shadows, the whispers began once more, luring the curious and the unwary into the depths of the marsh, where the true horror awaited. In the quiet town of Hollowbrook, nestled deep within the Appalachian Mountains, there was a legend that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. The legend of the Wraithwood Forest. It was said that those who entered the forest never returned, their souls claimed by an ancient, malevolent presence that lurked within. On a chilly autumn evening, Emma, a fearless young woman with a penchant for adventure, decided to defy the warnings and explore the Wraithwood Forest. Armed with a lantern and a determination to uncover the truth, she set off into the forest, her footsteps echoing through the silent trees. The forest was eerily still, and a thick mist hung in the air, obscuring her path. Emma's lantern cast a feeble light that seemed to barely penetrate the darkness, and the trees loomed like twisted sentinels, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. As she ventured deeper into the forest, Emma began to hear faint whispers, like the mournful cries of the wind. The shadows danced around her, taking on sinister shapes, and she could feel eyes watching her from the depths of the trees. Despite the growing unease in her heart, Emma pressed on, determined to uncover the truth behind the legends. She had heard tales of a hidden cabin deep within the forest, a place where the malevolent spirit was said to reside. After what felt like hours of wandering through the forest, Emma finally stumbled upon the cabin. It was old and decrepit, its windows shattered and its roof sagging. The air around it felt heavy with malevolence. She cautiously pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside, her lantern revealing a scene of horrifying discovery. The walls were adorned with crude symbols and strange writings, and in the center of the room stood an ancient, twisted oak tree, its roots seeming to merge with the cabin's floor. As Emma approached the tree, a sinister voice echoed through the room. "You shouldn't have come," it hissed, and the very air seemed to chill around her. Suddenly, the tree came to life, its branches writhing and contorting, forming a grotesque, humanoid figure. It reached out for her, its fingers like gnarled claws. Emma screamed and fled from the cabin, her lantern extinguished in the chaos. She ran blindly through the forest, pursued by the malevolent presence that had been awakened. As she stumbled through the misty darkness, Emma could hear the whispers growing louder, the shadows closing in. She knew she was being hunted, and there was no escape. Exhausted and terrified, she finally collapsed to the ground, her breath ragged. The malevolent presence loomed over her, its voice now a sinister chuckle. "Welcome to the Wraithwood, Emma," it whispered. And as the darkness swallowed her whole, Emma became just another soul claimed by the cursed forest. A cautionary tale for anyone who dared to defy the legend of the Wraithwood. In the end, the town of Hollowbrook continued to live in fear of the forest, knowing that the ancient evil that dwelled within would forever hunger for new souls to devour. Its whispers and shadows luring the unwary into its clutches, where they would be lost to the eternal darkness of the Wraithwood forest. Deep in the heart of the Scottish Highlands, a desolate and isolated village known as Glenhaven harbored a grim secret. For centuries, the villagers had lived in fear of the forbidding mountain that loomed over their homes, the Blackheart Peak. They believed the mountain to be cursed, haunted by an ancient and malevolent spirit that demanded sacrifices to satiate its hunger. In the autumn of 1827, a group of intrepid explorers arrived in Glenhaven. Among them was Dr. Eliza Caldwell, a renowned archaeologist and historian. She had heard whispers of the mountain's dark legend and was determined to uncover its secrets. The villagers tried to dissuade her, telling her tales of missing children, mysterious disappearances, and eerie wails that echoed through the night. But Dr. Caldwell was undeterred, convinced that there was a rational explanation behind the legends. With a team of seasoned adventurers, Dr. Caldwell set out for Blackheart Peak. The journey was treacherous, with thick mist shrouding the mountain, making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. The path was steep, and the air grew colder with each step, carrying with it a palpable sense of dread. As they ascended the mountain, the adventurers began to hear faint, mournful cries carried on the wind. Shadows danced in the mist, and strange symbols appeared etched into the rocks. It was as if the very mountain itself was warning them to turn back. But Dr. Caldwell pressed on, determined to reach the summit. There, they discovered an ancient stone circle, weathered by time and etched with arcane symbols. In the center of the circle lay a stone altar, stained with the marks of countless sacrifices. As Dr. Caldwell examined the altar, a chilling wind swept through the circle, extinguishing their lanterns. In the darkness, they heard a low, guttural growl, and then a voice, cold and mocking, echoing through the night. "You have come," it whispered, and the very ground beneath them seemed to tremble. Suddenly, the ground gave way, and the adventurers tumbled into a cavern hidden beneath the mountain. The cavern was vast and filled with the remains of those who had ventured here before. Human skulls and bones littered the floor, forming a gruesome mosaic. In the center of the cavern stood a towering figure, shrouded in darkness. Its eyes glowed like burning coals, and its voice reverberated through the cavern, filling the adventurers with dread. "You seek to uncover my secrets," it hissed, "but you shall join the countless others who have come before you." With that, the figure reached out, and the very earth beneath the adventurers' feet seemed to close around them, trapping them in a living nightmare. The walls of the cavern began to close in, and the air grew thick with suffocating darkness. Dr. Caldwell and her team screamed in terror as they were consumed by the mountain, their voices joining the chorus of wails that had haunted Glenhaven for centuries. Back in the village, the villagers heard the eerie cries carried on the wind and knew that the curse of Blackheart Peak had claimed more souls. They had learned to fear the mountain and its insatiable hunger, for it was a darkness that could not be conquered, only endured. And so, the legend of Blackheart Peak lived on, a cautionary tale of the darkness that lurked in the heart of the Scottish Highlands, a darkness that would forever hunger for the souls of those who dared to defy its curse.